The room was quiet, too quiet. Ethan could feel every pair of eyes on him, sharp and heavy, like knives pressing into his skin. His father raised his glass slowly, his movements deliberate, full of tension that made Ethan's stomach churn. The words that followed hit him like a fist. Some kids bring honor, others only bring trouble. The silence that came after was worse than any scream. Every echo of those words settled deep into Ethan's chest. He could barely breathe, and the world seemed to tilt around him. That single toast, meant for the whole family, had been aimed straight at him. He felt small, exposed, judged, condemned. He had always tried to please his father, always worked hard to earn that nod of approval. But tonight, approval had turned into accusation. It had all started a week ago. The scholarship money, the one thing that could secure his future and prove his worth, had disappeared from his father's office. Ethan had entered the room that day to return a set of keys his father had asked him to keep, only to be caught in a perfect storm of circumstance. His fingerprints, his presence near the drawer, his past mistakes that seemed insignificant until now. Everything pointed to him, and everyone believed it. Ethan tried to explain, but Mr. Harley had already made up his mind. His father's gaze, usually calm and measured, now carried the weight of disappointment and accusation. Every word Ethan spoke seemed to bounce off an invisible wall, unheard and unwanted. Noah, Ethan's older brother, had been standing nearby, looking exactly as he always did, confident, composed, untouchable in his father's eyes. But tonight there was something different. A faint smile, a shadow behind his eyes, a mask of false sadness. "I wish you'd just admit it, Ethan," he said softly, almost kindly, but the words carried venom. "Dad deserves honesty." That was all it took. The knife of betrayal twisted in Ethan's gut. Noah had been his closest ally, the person he trusted more than anyone. They had shared secrets, dreams, childhood adventures that no one else could understand. And now Noah was standing on the other side, ready to throw him under the bus to protect himself. Ethan's mind raced. He remembered the night before, when Noah had insisted he help him with a project that required money. Ethan had refused, not wanting to get involved. Could it have been then? Was this what led to everything? But no. Ethan knew the truth in his heart. He hadn't taken anything. He hadn't even thought about it. And yet, the world had turned against him in a single week. Walking back to his room, Ethan felt the weight of betrayal settle like lead on his shoulders. The house felt different now. Heavier. Colder. Every corner seemed to watch him. Every shadow. A reminder that he was alone. He thought about his father's toast, the way the words had cut into him. Public and final. Some kids bring honor, others bring trouble. The truth was, Ethan didn't feel like a child at all anymore. He felt like a stranger in his own home, judged by people he loved. That night, lying in the dark, Ethan's mind wouldn't rest. He replayed every moment of the day over and over. The door to his father's office, the drawer left slightly open, the way Noah had looked at him. It all made sense now. The anger inside him wasn't loud, but it was steady, cold, and clear. Someone had betrayed him, and everyone had let him take the fall. The injustice burned, and with it came a new clarity. He would not stay a victim. He would find the truth, no matter how long it took. And when he did, the people who had wronged him would feel the weight of their actions. Ethan began to notice the small details around him in ways he never had before. Every glance from his father, every word Noah spoke, every shift in tone or expression became a potential clue. He remembered that afternoon when he had been in the living room and overheard Noah muttering about needing money, how his brother's words had been filled with frustration and urgency. He remembered Noah lingering near their father's office, pretending to read a book, while glancing at the drawer again and again. The realization hit Ethan like ice water. The person he had trusted most, his own brother, had lied. Not just lied, but betrayed him in the cruelest way. The following days were a blur. Ethan went about his routine, attending school, pretending nothing had changed, while the anger and suspicion grew inside him like a storm gathering strength. Every word his father said seemed weighted with accusation. Every smile from Noah felt like a lie hiding deeper intentions. Ethan began to replay every memory, searching for patterns, searching for evidence, searching for a way to make things right. He felt the first stirrings of a plan forming in his mind, though it was not yet fully shaped. It was small, quiet, but it gave him purpose. He would not let them think he was powerless. One evening, Ethan found himself standing outside Noah's room, listening. Noah was on the phone, whispering anxiously, his voice trembling. Ethan could hear fragments, words about money, excuses, plans. The anger inside him flared, but it was tempered by understanding. Noah wasn't a monster. He was just a person, scared of failing, desperate to maintain the image of the perfect son in their father's eyes. That realization didn't make Ethan forgive him, but it changed something. The betrayal wasn't black and white. It was complicated, human, painful, and it demanded a response that was careful, deliberate, not impulsive. Ethan knew he had to act, but he also knew he had to wait. Rushing now would ruin everything. He needed patience, observation, strategy. The storm of emotion inside him was sharp, but it was focused. He wanted answers, but he also wanted control, a way to reclaim the dignity that had been stolen from him. He wanted Noah to understand the consequences of his actions, to feel even a fraction of the isolation and fear Ethan had endured. But he also knew that true justice required more than anger. It required timing, precision, and clarity of thought. That night, as he lay in bed, Ethan made a silent promise to himself. He would uncover the truth. He would confront Noah, and he would ensure that his father knew exactly what had happened. But he would not lose himself in the process. He would let the truth come out, not vengeance. For now, he had only one weapon: patience, and the quiet certainty that the world had underestimated him. By the end of the week, Ethan's anger had transformed into purpose. Every look, every conversation, every interaction became a piece of the puzzle. He observed, remembered, and planned. And in the darkest moments, when despair threatened to overtake him, he reminded himself, the person who wronged him would not walk away unscathed. They would face the consequences, not because Ethan wanted to destroy them, but because the truth demanded it. The first part of Ethan's journey had begun. The betrayal had been clear, the injustice unmistakable, and the path forward dangerous and uncertain. But for the first time in days, Ethan felt alive. The fire of resolve burned within him, sharp and consuming. He knew the road ahead would be difficult, filled with emotional storms and moral dilemmas. Yet he also knew he could not turn back. He would face Noah, confront the lies, and reclaim the truth. And in doing so, he would discover not just the actions of others, but the strength within himself. The seed of revenge had been planted, but it was not yet a storm. It was a quiet, simmering fire, waiting for the right moment to flare. Ethan closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and let the anger settle into focus. The first step had been taken. The world would see him not as the troubled son, the scapegoat, or the forgotten child, but as someone who would not be silenced, someone who would not be broken. Ethan moved through the house like a shadow. Every glance from his father, every word from Noah, felt like a trap waiting to snap shut. He had learned to hide his thoughts, to watch quietly, to listen carefully. The anger from last week still burned, but now it was tempered by strategy. He couldn't act recklessly. Every step, every decision had to be deliberate. He needed evidence, clarity, and timing. The betrayal was personal, and it required precision, not impulse. He watched Noah closely, noticing the smallest things. The way he avoided eye contact when the scholarship came up, the way he fidgeted with his phone, or tapped his fingers nervously when their father spoke about responsibility. Ethan began to retrace past moments, searching for the truth hidden in casual words. The memory of Noah asking for money for that project returned vividly. Ethan had refused, thinking it was trivial. Now he saw it differently, a possible spark that had ignited everything. Noah had been desperate, reckless, and his need for approval from their father had overridden honesty. Ethan spent hours replaying conversations in his mind, noting inconsistencies. He remembered overhearing fragments of Noah's whispers about needing cash, excuses that didn't add up. His brother had acted as if Ethan could never notice. That Ethan did notice. He saw patterns, small behaviors that painted a bigger picture. He started to piece together a timeline, connecting Noah's requests, his movements, and the scholarship disappearance. It was like assembling a puzzle, each piece revealing more of the image he had suspected all along. But discovery brought no peace. Each new insight deepened the anger and sharpened the sense of betrayal. Ethan had trusted his brother for years, shared dreams, secrets, and a bond he thought unbreakable. And now that bond had been shattered. Yet he also felt something else. An unexpected understanding of Noah's mindset. His brother had lived under the constant pressure to be perfect in their father's eyes. Every mistake was magnified, every misstep punished. Desperation had driven Noah, not cruelty. Ethan realized revenge wasn't about punishment anymore. It was about choice, about power, about control. Late one evening, Ethan found Noah alone. In the garage. The dim light highlighted his brother's tense posture, the way he avoided meeting Ethan's eyes. Ethan stepped closer, the air thick with unspoken words. "Why did you do it?" he asked quietly, careful not to start a fight but demanding honesty. Noah flinched, swallowed hard, then lowered his gaze. His voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried guilt, fear, and shame. "I didn't think Dad would blame me. I thought he'd question me first. I didn't mean for it to go this far," he admitted. Hearing the confession did not bring relief. Instead, it fueled the fire in Ethan's chest. He realized he now held the power in his hands. One word, one sentence, and Noah could fall from his father's favor just as Ethan had been forced to. That the thought of using that power made Ethan pause. Noah was flawed. Yes, but he was still his brother. Destroying him would bring satisfaction maybe, but it would leave scars that never healed. Ethan felt the weight of the choice pressing on him. The pull between vengeance and justice, between anger and restraint. In the days that followed, Ethan's mind became a battlefield. He rehearsed confrontations, imagined conversations with his father, replayed scenarios where Noah confessed under pressure. Each possibility had consequences. Acting too soon could backfire. Waiting too long could let the truth slip away. Every moment demanded patience, and every interaction carried tension. Even casual exchanges with his father now felt loaded with meaning. Every smile, every frown, every question about responsibility became part of Ethan's analysis. Despite the anger simmering inside him, Ethan began to see the situation from a broader perspective. Noah's actions were not entirely malicious. He was human, flawed, pressured, and scared. Ethan's desire for revenge had to compete with empathy, and that conflict was exhausting. It left him awake at night, turning over words, actions, and motives. Could he forgive? Could he act without letting rage guide him? The questions tore at him. Each answer seemed partial, incomplete, leaving him in a state of constant mental tension. Ethan also noticed subtle shifts in Noah's behavior. His brother grew quieter, more careful, as if sensing Ethan's watchful eyes. Small gestures betrayed anxiety. Trembling hands, an occasional stammer, eyes darting nervously during conversations. Each observation strengthened Ethan's resolve, but also complicated his emotions. Noah's guilt was real, visible, and tangible. This wasn't just a game of punishment. It was an intricate dance of trust, betrayal, and moral judgment. Ethan realized that true power wasn't simply exposing Noah. It was controlling the timing and manner in which the truth came out. One night, Ethan followed Noah outside as he went to the garage. The air was cold, the sky dark, the silence almost deafening. Noah sat on the edge of a workbench, head down, hands fidgeting. Ethan didn't speak immediately. He watched, letting the tension build, letting Noah feel the weight of his presence. "You have to tell Dad," Ethan said finally. The words were soft, steady, almost a command wrapped in concern. Noah looked up, eyes wide, caught between fear and shame. "I know," he said, voice shaking. I'll figure out how." Ethan didn't respond. He turned and walked away, leaving Noah to confront his own conscience. That single choice, to step back, to give Noah the chance to confess, carried more power than any outburst could. Ethan understood that real strength came from patience and control, not from letting anger dictate action. The fire of revenge still burned, but it was now harnessed, focused, channeled toward justice, not destruction. The days stretched on, each one bringing more tension. Ethan's interactions with his father remained careful, calculated. Every glance, every question, every subtle test of his patience was part of a larger strategy. Ethan practiced restraint, masking anger behind calm, learning to read his family like a book. It was exhausting but necessary. He could not allow emotion to cloud judgment. The goal was clear: truth, accountability, and reclaiming dignity without letting rage destroy him in the process. Ethan's internal struggle became almost a second life. He rehearsed scenarios endlessly, imagining the confrontation with Noah, imagining the revelation to his father. Each version had different outcomes, each with its risks and consequences. He understood now that revenge was never simple. It was tangled with morality, empathy, fear, and love. It required constant negotiation between what felt satisfying and what was right. By the end of the week, Ethan had a plan, though it was still fragile. He had gathered enough clues to confront Noah with certainty, yet he held back, letting his brother feel the pressure without force. Ethan had learned to balance anger and understanding, to weigh consequences, and to see the full picture. Noah's guilt was undeniable, but so was the potential for redemption. The lines between justice and revenge had blurred, leaving Ethan to navigate a path that demanded patience, clarity, and moral strength. Ethan's resolve strengthened. He understood now that the ultimate power was not in the act of revenge itself, but in choosing how and when to act. He would confront Noah, reveal the truth, and reclaim his father's trust. But he would do it on his terms, controlled, deliberate, and just. The anger still smoldered, but it was no longer a chaotic force. It was a tool, sharpened and precise, guiding him toward a confrontation that could right the wrong without destroying everything. The stage was set. Ethan had observed, waited, and planned. He had mapped the terrain of betrayal and guilt, charted every reaction and motive, and prepared himself for the confrontation that would define the next chapter. The fire of revenge still glowed within him, but it was now a controlled flame, ready to illuminate the truth rather than consume it. Ethan had grown from victim to strategist, from anger to focus, from hurt to strength. The battle was not yet over, but he was no longer defenseless. Part 2 ended with Ethan poised on the edge of action, ready to confront betrayal not with rashness, but with calculated purpose. The moral and emotional stakes had deepened. Revenge was no longer simple. It was a complex game of timing, morality, and understanding. Ethan's journey was far from complete, but the foundation had been laid for the storm that was coming. The tension was real, the stakes were high, and Ethan's mind was sharper than ever. The house was tense that evening, the kind of tension that made the air thick and heavy. Ethan sat at the dinner table, knife and fork in hand, but he barely noticed the food. Every sound, every shift of a chair, every glance carried weight. His father, Mr. Harley, seemed more distant than usual, lost in thought, the shadow of last week's betrayal still lingering. Noah sat across from him, fingers drumming lightly on the table, his posture rigid. Ethan could sense his brother's anxiety, a subtle tremor in the way he moved. The stage was set. Tonight would change everything. Ethan felt the fire inside him, a mix of anger, resolve, and moral calculation. He could speak a single word and unleash chaos. One accusation, one revelation, and Noah's carefully maintained image would crumble before their father. The temptation was fierce, almost irresistible. He imagined the satisfaction of watching his brother falter, hearing the shock in his father's voice, seeing Noah stumble under the weight of his own guilt. It was a vivid, intoxicating picture, but Ethan's mind kept returning to one question. At what cost? He remembered the nights he had spent replaying events, retracing conversations, examining motives and planning his moves. The betrayal was clear. Noah had stolen the scholarship money, acted out of desperation, and let Ethan take the blame. The evidence was in his mind, clear and undeniable. And yet, revenge was not the only path. Ethan could confront Noah privately, let him confess, and restore balance without destroying anyone. That path required restraint, patience, and moral courage, qualities that had been tested in ways Ethan had never anticipated. Mr. Hall raised his glass again, the gesture deliberate and slow. The familiar phrase echoed in Ethan's mind. Some kids bring honor, others only bring trouble. It was almost cruel how those words lingered, as if the toast itself had been designed to remind him of the previous injustice. Ethan clenched, his hands in his lap, focusing on the rhythm of his breathing, the steady beat of his heart, and the weight of the decision before him. He could feel his brother's eyes on him, aware that something had shifted. Noah's guilt was no longer hidden. It was raw, visible, and palpable. Ethan decided to act, but not impulsively. He leaned forward slightly, voice calm but firm. "Dad," he said, his words carrying authority without aggression. "I didn't take the scholarship money." The room froze. Forks hovered midair, eyes widened, and Mr. Hale's expression shifted from casual expectation to disbelief. Ethan continued, but someone did, and they should tell you themselves. The words hit Noah like a physical blow. He froze, swallowing hard, realizing that the moment he had dreaded, the confrontation, had arrived. The truth, once trapped in shadows and lies, now demanded to be faced. Ethan didn't need to push, to yell, or to attack. The power of the moment rested in honesty and timing, and he wielded it with precision. He had given Noah a choice: confess, or continue to carry the weight of his guilt, and the longer he delayed, the heavier it would feel. Noah's voice trembled as he finally spoke, first to Ethan, then to their father. I took it, he admitted, eyes downcast. I needed the money, and I panicked. I thought Ethan wouldn't be blamed. I didn't mean for it to go this far. The confession was raw, filled with shame, regret, and vulnerability. Every word confirmed what Ethan had suspected, but hearing it aloud brought a new, almost painful clarity. The betrayal had been real, the consequences severe, but the human side of it was undeniable. Noah was not a villain. He was a frightened, desperate brother who had made a grave mistake. Mr. Hale's reaction was immediate, a mixture of shock, disappointment, and finally understanding. Ethan, he said, voice softening, I'm sorry I doubted you. The apology carried weight. It was real, earned, and heartfelt. Ethan felt a strange mixture of relief and emptiness. The anger he had nurtured, the desire for revenge, had not been acted upon in the way he had imagined. Yet, in that emptiness was clarity, a realization that true justice did not require destruction. The satisfaction of revenge had been replaced by something subtler, stronger: control, moral integrity, and the restoration of truth. Noah remained silent for a moment, his guilt still heavy, but the first signs of relief flickered in his eyes. He had confessed, accepted responsibility, and faced the consequences he had feared. Ethan recognized the courage it took to admit wrongdoing, to face a father's disappointment, and to reclaim some dignity. In that acknowledgement, Ethan found a new kind of satisfaction. It was not the sharp, vengeful thrill he had imagined. It was deeper, steadier, and more enduring. The conversation shifted naturally, the tension slowly easing as Mr. Harley absorbed the truth. The family dynamic was irrevocably altered but not broken. Ethan realized that the bond between him and Noah could be repaired, though it would take time. Trust had been damaged, but honesty had reopened the door. In the quiet aftermath, Ethan understood that revenge is a tempting path, promising satisfaction, but often leaving scars that linger far longer than the initial act. Forgiveness, on the other hand, carries a slower, more challenging reward, but one that endures. Dinner continued, conversations tentative but genuine. Ethan noticed the subtle glances from Noah, the unspoken acknowledgement that the balance had shifted. He had not destroyed his brother. He had not destroyed himself. He had acted with thought, restraint, and moral clarity. And in doing so, he had reclaimed more than his father's trust. He had reclaimed his own sense of strength and dignity. The room still carried tension, but it was tempered with understanding, honesty, and the first steps toward reconciliation. Later, that night, as Ethan lay in bed, he reflected on the events. Revenge had been a tempting fire, bright and consuming, promising immediate satisfaction. But choosing patience, truth, and moral control had yielded a different kind of victory. Quieter, deeper, and lasting. The power of the decision had rested not in the act itself, but in the restraint he had exercised, the careful navigation of complex emotions, and the understanding that justice could be served without destruction. Ethan realized that life would continue with its challenges, betrayals, and moral dilemmas. But he had learned a critical lesson. The greatest victories are not measured by the suffering inflicted on others, but by the strength and integrity maintained in the process. Revenge can win a battle, but it rarely heals the wounds of the heart. Truth, honesty, and controlled action, however, can restore what was lost, repair what was broken, and create a foundation for the future. By the end of the night, the Harley household felt lighter. The burden of false blame had been lifted from Ethan's shoulders. The guilt that had consumed Noah was now visible, but it was real and accountable. Mr. Hale's disappointment was genuine, but it was tempered with understanding and recognition of the truth. The storm that had threatened to consume the family had passed, leaving clarity, resolution, and the fragile first steps toward healing. Ethan closed his eyes, the tension leaving his body in slow waves. He felt the fire of revenge subside, replaced by a quiet sense of control and moral victory. He had faced betrayal, observed carefully, and allowed truth to emerge without letting rage dictate his actions. The lesson was clear. Power lies not in striking back, but in knowing when to act, how to act, and what to forgive. He had reclaimed his dignity, restored honesty, and navigated the treacherous waters of betrayal with wisdom beyond his years. As the night deepened, Ethan understood something vital. Revenge may promise immediate satisfaction, but it is fleeting, often leaving destruction in its wake. True strength comes from patience, moral clarity, and the courage to confront wrongdoing with intelligence, not impulse. He had chosen that path, and in doing so he had emerged not only victorious in a practical sense, but morally whole, with a new understanding of family, loyalty, and the enduring power of truth. Ethan drifted into sleep, not with the thrill of revenge, but with the calm certainty that he had acted rightly. He had faced betrayal, navigated the storm, and chosen integrity over impulse. The journey was far from over. Relationships would need repair. Trust would need rebuilding. But he had learned that revenge rarely heals. Choice, control, and honesty, however, can restore balance, strengthen character, and leave a legacy far more enduring than any fleeting satisfaction gained from payback.